between sharp mountains, cold rivers, and misty mornings, there lived a man whose name is now spoken like a legend. Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, a father, a soldier, a coach, and the man who shaped a boy into an undefeated champion. From a young age, Abdulmanap believed that strength wasn't something you are born with, it's something you build. He trained sambo and wrestling for years, became a national champion in the Soviet Union, and earned a reputation as the coach who could turn ordinary kids into warriors. His philosophy was simple. If you want to defeat another man, you must first defeat yourself. Habib grew up watching his father train entire teams of fighters, and he was never special. In fact, Abdulmanap pushed him harder than anyone else. While other kids played football, Habib was running through the mountains, training in freezing rivers, and repeating drills until his muscles gave out. For Abdulmanap, there was no enough. There was only better. But what truly set him apart wasn't just discipline, it was vision. Abdulmanap used to say that Dagestan had the soul of a fighter, and that one day, the world would watch a boy from their village become the best on the planet. And he was right. Habib grew up as a wrestler, but his father saw something more in him: mental toughness. He never allowed him to lose focus, even for a second. He taught him not to fight for fame, but for honor. That victories mean nothing if they're not backed by character. That a true champion is not made in the cage, but at home, training after training. Then came the moment that changed everything. The first time, Abdulmanap took Habib to a major tournament. He watched his son enter the cage as a boy and leave it as a warrior. And that day, Abdulmanap told him a sentence Habib would remember for the rest of his life. One day the world will fear you, but you will fear no one. They continued together side by side, traveling, training, pushing the limits of what a human can endure. While other schools trained muscles, Abdulmanap trained the will. When others quit, his fighters kept going. That's why they called him the professor of martial arts. Habib kept getting stronger, better, and every success, every title, he dedicated to his father. Because without Abdulmanap, there would be no legend of Habib.
As time went on, Abdulmanap's name grew across Dagestan, but in his heart there was only one mission: to prepare his son for the biggest stage in the world. He didn't want Habib to be just a good fighter. He wanted him to be special, different, unbreakable. Days passed in a relentless rhythm. Training, mountains, cold rivers, repetition, discipline. While others dreamed of fame, Habib dreamed of only one thing: fulfilling his father's plan. And that plan was not small. Abdulmanap knew MMA was more than strength and technique. It was psychology. It was character. It was a way of life. And slowly, step by step, Habib became a fighter who had everything: heart, will, and an iron mind. He didn't enter a fight to prove himself. He entered to complete a mission. In Dagestan, people had already started talking about him, about the boy who never quit, the son who followed the path his father carved, the fighter who trained like his life depended on it. Abdulmanap watched it all quietly from the shadows, but with pride. He knew Habib was becoming what he always believed: a champion rising from nothing, who would one day conquer everything. Then came the moment when Habib stepped into the world of professional MMA for the first time. While other young fighters entered the cage with fear, Habib entered with calm, because behind him stood his father. The plan, the vision. First fight, first win, second, third. And every time he walked out of the cage, Abdulmanap would look at him and simply say, "You haven't shown everything yet." And Habib understood exactly what that meant. The journey had only begun. And what waited ahead was bigger than anything they had faced so far. Because the next stop was America, the UFC, the biggest fighting organization in the world. And Abdulmanap knew, there, the world would finally see what they had built in the mountains of Dagestan. Finally stepped into the UFC. He didn't just carry gloves and a mouthguard. He carried an entire mountain behind him. The expectations of Dagestan, the discipline his father burned into him, and the promise he made long ago to make Abdulmanap's vision real when the world wasn't ready. Fight after fight, Habib didn't just win, he dominated. He drowned opponents with pressure, strength, and a calmness that felt almost unreal. Analysts tried to explain it. Fighters tried to prepare for it, but the truth was simple. You can't train for someone who was shaped by Abdulmanap. Every victory was another step closer to the top. But behind the scenes, Habib was still the same kid from the mountains, calling his father after every fight, asking what he did wrong, hearing the same calm voice say, "Good, but you can be better." And then everything changed. In 2020, the world went silent. News came from the hospital. Abdulmanap had fallen ill, and the fight he now faced wasn't in a cage, but for his life. For the first time, Habib's world shook. The man who built him, guided him, stood beside him through every storm, was suddenly fighting alone. Habib visited him, held his hand, prayed beside him, but fate made its decision. When Abdulmanap passed away, the entire MMA world mourned. Champions, coaches, fans, millions felt the loss of a man who trained not only fighters, but characters. But no one felt it like Habib. The world wondered, would he return? Could he return? And then came UFC 254, the night the world would witness something unforgettable. Habib walked to the cage with tears he tried to hide. The man who always looked unbreakable suddenly looked human, but inside there was fire, the last mission his father gave him. He fought with heart, with precision, with a storm inside him, and he won, dominantly, beautifully, as if his father's voice was still echoing in the cage. And then in the center of the octagon he knelt and cried, not for victory, not for the belt, but for the man who wasn't there to see it. He removed his gloves, a symbol every fighter understands, and whispered to the world, "This was my last fight. A career ended. A legend was born." And the legacy of Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov lived on through every second of it. Because a father didn't just raise a champion, he raised a legacy